Hello everyone, my name is John Euler. Welcome back. This is Journey to Healing. We are in the midst of a series on grief and loss, an extended series, because we are diving deep into a key component of grief and loss, which is how to have boundaries in the current day so that things can begin to settle down, so that I can experience peace, so that I can do the kind of processing necessary in order to grieve the past. So we're looking at the topic of boundaries right now. If you want to kind of be brought up to speed on the different components of being able to get to a point where you can implement boundaries, one of those components is being able to spot what we are calling a pig. And we are using the term that Jesus used. So we're not calling names, we are assessing. So if you want to go back and review some of that material, you can find that at SurvivorSupport.net under podcasts. So picking up where we left off prior to the break last time, we're looking at what are the purpose of boundaries. The first is to reflect reality. We're going to help someone begin to understand that what they're doing is not okay. And that's usually on a scale of 1 to 10. That's kind of the first, maybe level 1, level 2. The reason why maybe level 1 is pretty much where we all are as far as human error and faults and failings. Ideally, if someone has a conscience, you won't ever have to really talk to them, but we all need to have discussions over time. But as far as if someone knows they've been hurtful, their conscience, it presupposes it's sensitive. So in category 1, you're dealing with someone who is normal in the sense that they have a conscience and they want to have a conscience. They work hard at ensuring that their conscience remains sensitive. So that person will self-correct. They'll be mindful enough, they're observant enough, they can tell, they can see the look on your face, they can see what they've just done. They know that they raised their voice in a way that they shouldn't have. So they themselves will initiate the repentance, as it were. They'll initiate that call to clarify and not justify, but to let the other person know that they were wrong, and they're going to begin to work on that. And they will work on that. If someone doesn't work on changing, at some point in time, we'll have to conclude they don't care enough. They don't care enough about someone else. They care more about themselves. So if I cut myself some slack, as I am hurtful, then I'm giving myself permission to care more about me than I am you. And that is not right. So the first thing, as far as the purpose of boundaries, the first purpose is to reflect reality. Here's another key component: to promote growth. If you think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, what have you just said about the person you're thinking of? You called them what? Right? You've called them an old dog. You're suggesting that a person can get to a point, if they don't have a degenerative disease, we all understand Alzheimer's, we all understand, cognitive decline. But if someone is not in cognitive decline, they probably are with it. They probably know how to turn it on and turn it off around other people in a way that benefits them. That either they're achieving something they want, including they want people to think well of them. So if somebody can do this, if somebody can discern when to turn it on and turn it off, that can be in their best interest, then we're dealing with somebody that can figure out how to continue to move themselves along to the next level of growth. So if they're getting to a point where they're cutting themselves some slack and they're justifying and rationalizing, or they're slow to begin to address the things they're doing, then not only is their selfishness starting to grow, not only are they starting to harden their heart a little bit, they're not listening to their conscience, but they are now starting to hurt themselves as well. We're now moving from a 1 to the beginning of about a 2 now. We're into level 2, which is things that are starting to become habitual. If at that point the person isn't addressing and taking care of these issues, then they're cutting themselves slack to be what? To be like how they are. Well, since when are we ever called to allow someone to stay at a lower level of maturity? We are always called to speak the truth in love, in a reasonable way. And again, love is not nice. Okay? Speak the truth in a reasonable fashion. And then as iron sharpens iron. Now, is there an exception to that? I don't think there's an exception. It doesn't say, well, iron sharpens iron unless they've been rusty and crotchety and unless they went through a lot in their life. It doesn't say that. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person is to another, meaning we are called to help someone better themselves. It is not okay to sit back and watch someone destroy themselves little by little. If you have someone that's in an addiction, and that'll be at a 3, quite frankly, level 3 or 4, we need to, if they're not going to do something, then we have to. So it promotes growth. So the idea of boundaries is not cutthroat. It is not just for us. It's also, at least in the first stages, we care enough about another person to where we believe they can grow. And so we're going to help them on to the next level. But we also care about us. But initially we're starting to see that, you know what, somebody has some issues here. The next is it serves as a wake-up call. What does that mean? That somehow they're starting to dumb down their own intuition to where they're now becoming this way. Or I'm sorry, they're dumbing down their conscience. Okay? They're dumbing down their conscience, they're turning down their volume, so they're now becoming this way. Well, what does that look like? Well, sadly, a lot of people have these kind of people in their lives. And if I give myself permission not to do the right thing and begin to respond, once I'm at a 2, it's like a snowball. Once the snowball begins to build, what happens? It starts to move and it starts to pick up speed. So someone that's at a 2, they don't stay there. They may change, but I'll tell you one thing that's happening is their level of sophistication becomes more. And people around them have permitted it, so they start to say, well, you know what, that's just how they are. Really? Well, let's take a look at someone who has been given permission to be this way, and nobody's going to be straightforward with her.
Oh, it was a terrible thing.
Oh, Russell, I feel sick.
Oh, take it easy, honey. These things happen, you know.
Now, what kind of an attitude is that? These things happen. They only happen because the whole country is just full of people who, when these things happen, they just say, these things happen, and that's why they happen.
Let's try not to get upset.
Come on, Russell. We've got to have control of what happened to us. We left it up to you. We never hear the last of it. But you're the one that needs police.
You're right.
And do you know what all those half-wit morons up in Sacramento do about it? They just sit there with their big feet up on their big desks and milk 15 million people of as much graft.
Listen, I want to say something. I'm sorry to interrupt,
Russell was
but
to have no undue excitement of any kind for at least 2 weeks because of his condition.
Yeah, but I think that
And that's why we came on this little trip, so Russell could just relax.
Yeah, but I think
He should have told the police.
You keep on saying that. What's the police got to do with it?
But, Mother, I think the police were chasing the man. They drove up so fast.
Well, why shouldn't they have been chasing him? He was speeding.
Yeah, but I think
I'm only thinking of Russell's condition.
You mean his financial condition, because that's the only condition that he has.
Yeah, but
Emmeline, do you know exactly why your husband had a nervous breakdown?
Yeah, but
It's because he has sunk $40,000, including $15,000 of my money, into a company that makes seaweed for people to eat.
Yeah, but
And not only does nobody like it, but it costs over $4 a can.
Yeah, but
what?
well, most people like it, and I like it, and I'm working hard and trying to keep the cost down.
Yeah, you were working hard trying to keep the cost down the day that you ran out of your office and stood in the street screaming.
Mother!
Oh, Emmeline, shut up!
Mother.
And you too!
Well, some of you probably have somebody in your life like that. That's from the movie Mad World. How in the world did that mother or mother-in-law become that way? Over time, and with people tolerating it. Well, but you can't control anybody, correct? But all you can do is ensure that you are protected. I may be getting a little feedback here. Sorry. There we are. So certainly how that woman became that way is nobody told her enough. And so she feels free to run her mouth like that. And look at how hurtful she became. Not only is she grating on people's nerves, but then she starts to become slanderous. She starts to just chip away at people. And that we're not called to tolerate that. So that's morphed into a 3, actually, because now she's become hurtful of others in an overt fashion. So we need to be able to let someone know that, hello, this is not okay. And then eventually we have to, and this is actually true along the way. Once somebody hits about a 2-ish, 2.5, now we're moving into 3, we have to permit natural and logical consequences. That's actually probably at the beginning of 2. Okay, the first thing you want is natural and logical consequences to be brought to bear. And from that point on. So if things continue to get worse, then you allow the consequences to do the talking rather than you so much. And that way, you're reflecting reality to the person that, listen, this is not okay. I'm not going to control you. I'm not going to tell you what to do or not to do, but I'll tell you what, around me, this is not going to work. And so I remove the audience in one way or the other. That's the scary thing, because if I do not believe I have the right to speak up, if I don't believe I have the right to begin to implement changes, and if I fear loss, and that's why this is part of the grief and loss series. If I feel that the other person might respond in such a way that they allow for distance, and if I think on some level that that's going to be too painful, then I'm never going to be able to implement these, meaning boundaries, but I have to. And that's why I have to do my own work first before I ever begin to try to implement firm boundaries. That's why I have to make sure I'm going to be okay. I have to work through my own issues first, because if I try to confront someone, especially someone like we just saw, out of my hurt rather than my healing, then I am dependent upon how they will respond. I mean, can you imagine trying to implement some boundaries with that mother and mother-in-law? How well is that going to go? So depending upon the extent to which that couple is willing to speak truth and do so in a proper way, it's probably still going to escalate. And you know it is. Why? Because look how old she is. Look how long she has been doing that. She's been giving herself permission. So that's sort of that's a very funny movie, but how many families can relate to that? I don't know if you hear the cat in the background. Our cat is having some boundaries. What is another purpose for boundaries? It is to protect. To protect who? Protect us. Meaning, to protect the people that wouldn't presume upon someone else. To permit someone, as they start to morph and that snowball grows, they're going to become increasingly hurtful. We looked at the Carol Burnett and the Vicki Lawrence clip about Mama, and they're kind of snarky and back and forth, and they do the guilt trip. Then we looked at the clip that we just saw from Mad World, where obnoxious and ornery. There are situations that can begin to morph that are very, very different. And a lot of people have gone through that. And unless people begin to understand that they need to, when somebody morphs into category, with a selfish person, if they begin to morph into category 4, now we're talking a whole different ballgame as I begin to set this up. What happens when someone begins to morph? They certainly become selfish. I'm trying to set this, sorry about that. They will become increasingly hurtful, and they can start to become abusive. Joan Crawford of a number of years ago, looked wonderful to the cameras. She had fans. People thought she was wonderful because on camera, she looked like a wonderful person. But behind the scenes, she had adopted some kids. The first child she adopted, she abused. And it was a horrible situation. No one knew until one day it started to come out. Some of you have gone through that type of thing. That changes the ballgame completely because now you're dealing with someone who is overtly hurtful and has morphed into a pig. So if you can relate to this clip, for some of you it's going to be hard to watch. It's a very small clip out of the movie Mommy Dearest, based upon a true story. But it's important we watch.
Let me see that.
My God, Christina, it can't be. Last time I saw you, you were 4.
How are you, Miss Bennett?
God, call me Barbara. Teaching you some fancy manners at Chadwick.
Is that all they've been teaching her?
Well, how do you like school?
Very much, thank you.
She got expelled.
That's a lie.
Excuse me, Barbara. Christine, I want to talk to you. In the other room. Why do you deliberately defy me?
Why did you tell her I got expelled?
Because you did get expelled!
Is a lie.
You love it, don't you? You love to make me hit you!
Joan!
Barbara, please! Please, Barbara! Leave us alone, Barbara. If you need anything, ask Carol Ann. It's wonderful. It says what?
Some of you can relate to that. Some of you can relate to even worse. Some of us can't relate to that, and so we don't understand how some people can have a hard time with boundaries. We also don't understand how some people can have a hard time with Mother's Day, with Father's Day. We don't understand. Why? Because we may have had parents that wouldn't have done that kind of thing, wouldn't have had a public image. But behind the scenes, what was going on? How do you know if someone in your life, how do you know if a pig, how do you know if someone was a pig? We actually looked at that. Again, the podcast, How Big of a Pig, that's extremely important to go back and review. But how do you know, in brief, how do you know if someone is a genuine pig? Because they will never acknowledge. They will never they'll never stop. They'll never confess. They'll never say exactly what you do about what happened. They won't reflect reality. They will justify, rationalize. They will never become humble. They will give themselves permission to remain as they are, and they will never demonstrate that they were ever truly sorry. The trickiest kind of situation is once somebody leaves home, think about that adoptive daughter. She leaves home, she grows up, and now it's Mother's Day. Now let's say she goes to church, and what happens at church? We're told that every mother is worthy of honor, which is not true. That mother was not worthy of honor. What happens if it's Father's Day? Well, the same thing. They're told every father is worthy of honor. That is not true. Small children are to obey their parents. Why? Because that's what they're supposed to do. Now, an abusive parent, most kids don't know. They actually need to be rescued from an abusive parent. The question is, how many people in church are aware enough of the red flags of abuse to even be mindful enough to begin to ask some questions. If you have kids that are looking depressed, but in that case, let's say Joan Crawford went to church, she'd be preening. But if you have some kids that have a deadpan face, that don't have a lot of affect, don't have a lot of expression, are always wearing long sleeve shirts, that can be an interesting indicator of self-injurious behavior or other things. You may have some really damaging secrets going on. Yet if the kids start to show signs of quote unquote acting out, what'll happen? Well, that mother or father can go to the elder board and say, you know what, I don't know what's going on, my kid. And they start to point at the kid. We call that the identified patient. Oftentimes, the children will begin to enact or act out what's going on within their family. So it's these family secrets that cause the greatest damage. And it is in those situations where the greatest boundary violation takes place. And those young people growing into adults will have the hardest time implementing boundaries because they've never seen it. They never experienced it. So they will find they're in an either-or proposition. All they know is fight or flight. And that's the makings of what's called borderline personality disorder. What other kind of abuse can go on? This one's going to be equally as hard. This is Robert Duvall in the movie The Great Santini.
The Great Santini! Do you know, Dad, not one of us has ever beaten you in a single game. Not checkers, not dominoes, not softball, nothing.
Watch it, Benny's getting that look.
Come on over here. Come over here, Daddy Bull. It's all over, Colonel. Get out of here before I knock every freckle off your face.
That's mean.
Wasn't that great?
Come on, Jocko. You got to win by 2 baskets. He said 1. I changed my mind. Let's go.
Now, you're not going to cheat the boy out of his victory. Come on, be a good sport.
Who the hell asked you anything?
Don't you talk to me like that.
I'll play him, Mom.
No, you won't. Now, he beat you, and it was beautiful.
Lillian, you better get in the house before I kick your butt.
It was just beautiful.
No, I mean it. Come on, let's go. Hurry, come on.
Touch that ball.
Dad. You better move, woman. All right.
Jerk.
Come on, let's go. Come on.
He beat you.
Get out of here. Kind of like winning, huh, Dad? Get smart with me, Jocko. Kick your butt. Now, come on, guard me. You got to win by 2. I'm not going to guard you, Dad. Hey, Mama's boy. Mama's boy. I bet you're going to cry. Come on, Mama's boy. Let's see you cry. Come on. Squirt a few. Come on, cry. Come on, cry. Come on. Come on. Just a few. Come on. Squirt a few. Come on. Let me see you squirt a few. Come on, cry. Cry. 1, 2, 3, cry. 1, 2, 3, cry. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on, little girl. Cry. Cry. My favorite daughter, Ben. I swear to God, you're my sweetest little girl. This little girl just whipped your ass good, Colonel.
Some of you can relate to that. Some of you were raised in that kind of home, or that kind of abuse, or worse. That is a pig. That is a major grade. That's a great, major professional grade pig. That was not a father. That was a man who got a woman pregnant, happened to be his wife, never intended to be a father. That is not a man worthy of honor. That is a dishonorable man, and boundaries have to be implemented with him. But if you watch that movie, and I highly recommend it, it's called The Great Santini, you will see that later on that father, who's a Marine fighter pilot, that's why he shouldn't be that way, but gives himself permission, he ends up crashing and dying, and that son now has guilt on the inside. I won't tell you why, but it's very powerful. We have to be able to implement boundaries. Why? So that abuse does not continue, so that we do not continue to be abused and allow ourselves to be abused. No one deserves to be treated the way that father was treating that son. That father had issues, granted. We're not responsible for what we're given, but we are responsible for what we do with that. There was no excuse for that father to treat that son that way. So that son would grow up with what on the inside? With all sorts of anger. What's he going to do with that anger? That's up to him. We understand it. He's not responsible for what he's given, but he is responsible for what he does with it. So he will have to have boundaries on himself. It's called his conscience. But he will then also, if he doesn't monitor his conscience, then somebody else will have to help reflect reality so that ultimately he realizes he needs some healing. And that's exactly what we're going to look at next time as we look at how to implement additional boundaries when it comes to somebody that has been wounded that is also now becoming hurtful. And we will pick that up at this point on the next edition to Journey to Healing.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, John Euler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, schedule a personal consultation with John, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with John, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.